Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Newton from the Cranard School, joined today by Karen Burns, who is the Executive Vice President of the Indianapolis Zoo. Karen, I'm guessing in that role you wear a lot of different hats, you have a lot of different responsibilities. Give us an overview about what you do in your current position.
I'm externally focused. So that means that I tell people I don't really do the fun stuff. I'm not really taking care of the animals. But I do make sure that the animals get fed because I'm a fundraiser. So I oversee the fundraising, the marketing, the membership, the face of the zoo, which you would recognize through our graphics and our creative services. But I also oversee education and conservation. So I'm out in the field working with conservationists, and I also serve as the executive director of the Indianapolis Prize, which is the world's leading award for animal conservation.
I want to get back to that in just a couple of minutes, but first I want to get your career path. What brought you to this, and why the nonprofit world?
You know, it's interesting. One of my very first jobs coming during school, you know, the way I paid for college, was waiting on tables. And I learned when I was waiting on tables what real generosity sometimes looks like and how people can make a difference in one person's life, whether that's through a tip. And I really started to understand that you can change people's lives. Now I think you would almost call it crowdfunding. It's a micro grant in some ways. And that's where I started to understand giving in many ways. I've worked in several different jobs. I'm a baby boomer. That's what we do. But I think my first philanthropy job out of college was the March of Dimes. And that was when I really started to understand the role philanthropy plays in our society and how powerful the not-for-profit model really is and how transformative philanthropy can be.
Let's go then to your current role. You mentioned you have a lot of different responsibilities, and let's start with the fundraising part. What's the biggest challenge right now in fundraising, and where is your clientele? Who tends to give money and support the Indianapolis Zoo?
Well, the Indianapolis Zoo is a global conservation organization. Our mission is to empower people and communities, both locally and globally, to advance animal conservation. But the majority of our funding is still based in the greater Indianapolis area, although we're starting to see the impact of that global mission in our funding. The biggest challenge in fundraising, I think, is that there's never enough. And I think those of you here at the university can say the same thing. I think that it's a very powerful model, though, because it's how the Indianapolis Zoo is the largest zoo in the country to receive no tax-based revenue. And that surprises people. So most of the zoos that you would be familiar with are receiving millions of dollars, either from the city or the county, or however their tax structure is based. So the Indianapolis Zoo tends to be very entrepreneurial, and we tend to make our money the way most business people make their money. But we're lucky we have philanthropy as part of the mix, because that helps us keep the zoo affordable. As a mission-based organization, it's our job to make sure that the people who cannot afford to buy a ticket to the zoo have access to the opportunities that the zoo offers our community.
I'm guessing that part of your responsibility is an educational one to the public in terms of, and we hear a lot about, there's concern about when animals are held or are out of their natural habitat. Are they being taken care of? How do you educate people to ensure them that the Indianapolis Zoo is on the front edge of that?
You know, you sort of asked two different questions there. We operate on a paradigm that talks about how we believe that we need to engage people first. They have to have that opportunity with a live animal to understand and be fascinated. Once they care about that animal, we have an opportunity to talk to them a little bit about that animal, where that animal lives in the wild. What's happening to that wild? What pressures are put on that animal in the wild? And then hopefully we hope to get them to the stage where we can empower them to make a difference. So we believe that there is nothing that replaces the opportunity to see a real live giraffe and know that if you don't have the chance to go to Africa, you may not realize that that is an animal that really exists. It's not just something that you see in a video game or on TV. We don't believe anything makes that emotional connection like your opportunity to get close to a live animal. So our animals are our ambassadors to the public. They help us bring people along and tell the story. With that said, when we have an animal in our care, and we believe that, first off, that animal has to receive the very best possible care we can provide. It has to have a purpose. It has to help us tell a story. It has to connect to its wild counterpart so that we can make that connection between the ambassador in the zoo and its cousins in the wild. We ask ourselves all the time, are we capable of providing the very best care for this animal in our care? And if the answer is that we can't, we relocate that animal to a facility that can. So number one priority for us is the welfare of the animals in our care. We make a cradle-to-grave commitment to those animals. And some of those animals live 60 years plus.
Having said that, I'm sure that when you do have the unfortunate days when you lose animals, it has to be difficult for everyone involved in the organization.
We tell people that the people who are in the animal care side of it have dedicated their lives to animal care, and they've gotten advanced degrees in it. They go to undergraduate school, get a bachelor's degree. Many of them have master's degrees. They spend a lot of time caring for that animal. So there are, I guess the analogy is not exactly to your pet, but I don't think it's too far off. There are times when an animal gets to the end of its life, and that's when you make a decision about euthanasia. And that's part of the cycle of life, because in reality, all animals are going to pass. So is it hard on us? It is. It is. When an animal's had a good life and we know we've given it a good life, that's a lot different than when an animal leaves us too soon, just like your pets at home.
One of the most exciting things that you have going, you mentioned it at the very beginning, the Indianapolis Prize. For those who are not familiar, what is it? How is it awarded? And what's the real impact that it has?
The Indianapolis Prize is the world's leading award for animal conservation. And the impact of it is, well, I'll go back to how it started, and it's been 10 years, and I've been there since the beginning of the Indianapolis Prize. And it started with a real simple observation. Being in Indianapolis, we have a lot of sports stars. And so we said, how can we take the men and women who dedicate their lives to animal conservation? And these people really are heroes. This is real life Indiana Jones stuff. And how do we take that story and put them on the same level as Andrew Luck, Drew Brees? How do you create that interest and get young people who say, when I grow up, I want to be Dr. Carl Jones, who was our most recent winner of the Indianapolis Prize. So the prize recognizes a conservationist who has made a significant impact on saving an animal species. So we tell people this isn't someone who goes out and tries really hard. This is somebody who makes a difference. This is somebody who has figured out how to change the tide and to tell people there's hope. Sometimes we forget that there is hope for animal species, and Carl Jones is a fascinating individual. The prize awards the winner $250,000
Real money.
Unrestricted cash grant, which means they don't have to account for anybody but the IRS. Each of the 5 finalists receive a $10,000 cash award. And it's transformative. These are people who have figured out how to make a difference in animal conservation. And we say to them, whatever it takes, if you need to provide college money for your kids so you can stay working in the field, you're a smart person. You've done some brilliant things. You decide. We're not going to tell you what to do with that award. And that, not only the amount of money, but the way it's given is part of what makes it so significant. I think a comparable award would be a MacArthur Award, one of the Genius Awards. It says, you guys know what you're doing. You spend the money any way you want to. And
you're getting entries from all over the world on this.
All over the world. It's an international award. So Carl Jones, who most recently won, he does most of his work in the island of Mauritius. He's a Welshman. And what Carl did that is particularly notable is that Mauritius, you might know, is the island where the dodo is from. And the dodo is the first species to have gone extinct as a result of man and man's actions. So Carl Jones comes along, and he is an expert in birds. He's been raising and rescuing birds ever since he was a young lad in Wales. And there were 5 known living specimens of the Mauritius kestrel. And Carl Jones came along and said, I can save this bird. I know I can. 10 years later, there are 500 Mauritius kestrels living in Mauritius today. That's part of what Carl Jones's impact has been on the world, and that's why he won the Indianapolis Prize.
Well, speaking of prizes, I know that Karen has been recognized by the Indianapolis Business Journal as one of the most influential people in Indianapolis, and certainly you've made a big impact on the community. You're very involved in your community, not just at the zoo, but at some other nonprofit organizations.
I am firmly rooted in the nonprofit mindset, and I believe that I have an obligation to give back to my community as well. And so I have been the president of the Downtown Indianapolis Kiwanis, and have been involved with the foundation. I am also on the board of the Salvation Army because I have a strong commitment to believing that people matter. Animals matter, people matter. I also am part of the Downtown Indianapolis community, and I'm on Downtown Indy, and I chair the marketing board for Downtown Indy, so I've got my feet in a couple of different places.
Let's go back to your marketing hat at the zoo. What's new at the zoo in the summer of 2017?
Magnificent macaws. And macaws have a wonderful story. This is a bird that you find in South Africa. You find in Costa Rica. I said South Africa, I meant South America. It's a big bird. It's a glorious bird. It's the bird that you see depicted sitting on a pirate's shoulder. So, and it's also a very threatened and endangered bird. And so this summer at the Indianapolis Zoo, we have a flock of over 50 macaws that will fly through the zoo free and land in our new bicentennial pavilion that was provided for us by the Lilly Endowment. And the birds will fly in from the other side of the zoo, and they will land, and people will have a chance to talk with the trainers and interact with the birds. So these birds are amazing. They live to be about 60 years old. That means if you come to the Indianapolis Zoo today, your grandchildren will have the chance to see the exact same birds that you're visiting with today. And they tell the story. And the story is that the Indianapolis Zoo provides funding to a project called the ARA Project that is in Costa Rica that works to save these birds in the wild. And so there's a direct connection between the birds in Indianapolis that you're going to meet and the animals in Costa Rica. And in fact, the migrating songbirds that you'll see in Indiana this summer actually come from the same place these macaws do.
Sounds like another reason to go to the zoo. And Karen, we thank you for not just your work at the zoo, but the Indianapolis community. And we also thank you for coming to campus and spending time with our students today.
It's a beautiful day. Why would I be anywhere but here?
I like that. For Karen Burns, I'm Tim Newton.